All right. Hey, everybody. Welcome to the Modern Meeting. My name is Adam. I'm a compulsive gambler. My last bet, February 8th, 2022.
And I'm Alex, also a compulsive gambler. Last bet, April 21st, 2024. I almost forgot what it was.
Guess who's back?
Whew.
Back again. So, Alex is back,
Damn.
everybody. Welcome. This is episode number 40.
Wow.
Episode 40 of the Modern Meeting. I mean, uh, these things are only an hour, but I don't even know where we begin.
Where did we leave off?
Where did we leave off? Oh, boy.
Where were we?
Where were we? So yeah, I mean, before we get to Rob, who is
Hey,
our
first
guest this
first of
week.
all, quickly,
Oh, go. Yeah.
great to be back. Thank you for
Great
having me.
great to
Genuinely,
have you.
it's great
Great
to be
to have you.
back. I recently have gotten more dialed into what you've been doing, and you've been doing some really really awesome stuff, and I'm very very proud of where it is and what's to come, and it's really good to be back. So thank you.
For sure. Appreciate you. For those who don't know, because I think, obviously since you've last been on, the audience has grown, and I think that, if people didn't go back to the beginning, um, just to bring you up to speed. So Alex has been there since the beginning. We talked in the early episodes, like the Modern Meeting was born in a Chili's. Shout out Crystal in the East Providence Chili's.
On bar napkins.
Yep.
Yep.
On bar napkins and the notes app in my phone.
Yep.
And yeah, I mean, it's it's one of these things that we're gonna get to in more depth later in the episode. But I think that it's important for us to be open and honest about what happened. And I think what happened was for me, and I think you too, like we just got a little ahead of ourselves. And I think that the friendship and the sponsorship and the podcast and this and that and you being
It
in
was a,
between jobs and
it
me
was a lot.
hating my job,
It was a
it
lot.
just it
Yep.
was a lot. It was a perfect storm of a lot of stuff. But here we are, which you know
Still here.
yeah.
Still swinging.
um, so for the people who do know you, which I'm sure the majority of the audience does, like bring us up to speed a little bit. What's been going on?
Yeah. Still a compulsive gambler. That hasn't changed. Still taking things a day at a time, as much as possible. But no, I've been doing really well. I think. Yeah, I think from my perspective, I think in a lot of ways, even though it was only a few months ago, looking back at where I was last time I was on the podcast regularly, last time people heard from me, uh, it feels like a really different version of myself. I feel like it was a much more immature um, version of me that lacked perspective. I was between jobs, like you said. I was in really deep with you and this podcast, and it kind of consumed me, I think. And we talk a lot about ego on this podcast, or at least I know you and I did, and I didn't want to maybe admit it back at the time, but my ego was very much, in a lot of ways, was driving the boat. And I think looking back on it now, I think we'll talk about perspective a little bit later. Looking back on it now, things that seemed like a big deal in that moment that maybe led to some issues between you and I, definitely, weren't that big of a deal. Um,
For sure. And I think for me, I don't think I was a different person, but I was definitely a different podcaster.
hmm,
Because the stuff that we butted heads about in the early stages of the Modern Meeting, looking back on it now, like I'm so like it makes me sad that that led to such heated arguments with you because we were both coming from a place of ignorance where
right.
we didn't know what we were doing. Like, I I, I didn't, I didn't know what the path was. I didn't know how much we should care about social media or how much we should care about downloads or how much we should care about anything.
Right.
And now I know that like all that shit just happens. It's going to happen. Whether it happens or not, you know, I just got to keep pushing forward. And now as I'm saying this, I know that I said something similar to that at the beginning, but I didn't mean it. Now I
Yeah,
really do.
well,
Now I really do mean
oh,
it.
I know you do. I think we've talked a lot about this. I think I was at a time where all I really had was the podcast.
Mm,
And I think I so badly wanted to contribute to something and be able to control something. And these are all things I shouldn't be feeling at all about anything, and especially not a podcast about sobriety and recovery where the goal is to help people. Um, I think the lines were blurred.
for
I
sure.
think it was a friendship and there was sponsorship and we essentially started a business together almost, right? We joked about it, this being a non-traditional relationship, and like, oh, this isn't by the book, right? And that's what bit us in the ass, right?
Yeah.
Was there was too much too soon. We both kind of probably knew it, but kept pressing forward because we felt like it was a good product, I think, and it was in a lot of ways, but it was at the expense temporarily of our friendship, which certainly wasn't worth it. And we've chipped away um, at that. And like we said, we're still here in a different way, which doesn't mean worse. It's just different. Um,
That sounds worse. I'm just kidding.
no, but I
It's
think
not
it's
me, it's you.
no, but I think being able, like for me, being able to contribute still is awesome.
Yeah, for
And
sure. For sure.
you built something, even it hasn't even been that long, but you've built something and built these relationships, and this has evolved since I've been on the podcast, and it's now something that I'm happy to join when I can and be a part of, versus feeling like I have to help you build it or drive it. And I think that was just too much too soon, and obviously didn't work. So I think things worked out as they were supposed to, quite frankly. And
I
I
love that.
very comfortably have that perspective right now. Whereas I know I was gripping onto it so hard early on. Again, I didn't have a job. I now am a few months into a job I really like, where I'm doing well, and I have some purpose there, and I'm trying to build purpose and healthy habits in my personal life and get a sense of who I was back and some sense of responsibility and things that I know I need to do as an adult in recovery. So yeah, I think you're going to hear the word perspective probably a billion times this episode. At least for me, my perspective has changed and is in a much better place, and that makes me feel just overall better about things.
Yeah, that's, I mean, so well said. And I appreciate you. I know that, I asked you to come back in the pod probably like a couple months ago. And, you were honest. You were like, you know what? I'm not there yet. Like, and I think that, over time and over some good conversations that we've had, and I, like you said, I think it all happened the way it was supposed to happen. And I know that, I speak for all the modern meeting listeners that I'm sure people are in their cars right now, very excited to hear your voice.
Pulling over because they're sobbing tears of joy.
I mean, maybe not that far, but
No,
it's,
there's
they're
the
excited.
old ego.
They're
No, I think the last thing I'll say is I think there were, like, this was never, just to settle the tabloids down out there. There was never like real animosity here. I think like anything, it was maybe too much too soon, and that can happen in relationships, with things in your life, with whatever, right? It can be too much too soon. I think we were in too deep. The lines were blurred. I never really felt animosity towards you as a person. I think how it played out as far as our call it our business relationship, just to
right.
make it simple. Maybe I didn't like the things I was hearing a lot of times, and again, that blended over into my personal life. I've said to you now, the my pride and me just being a stubborn asshole sometimes. I didn't like what I was hearing from you a lot. It doesn't mean it was wrong,
Right.
right? And I again now am very comfortable saying that. And there's some things that I felt like I had to do, maybe because you and others were telling me I should do them. And now I have accepted and know that I'm not perfect. And there's things I wish I had done differently. And I'm going to say that again in a year and 2 years and 5 years based on things I do in the next year, 2 years and 5 years. But I'm I'm going to keep doing my best, and I'm going to do it for me first and foremost, and not because I think that I should do it for other people. But I'm now comfortable, I think, enough with myself in recovery, at least, to do that and feel pretty good about it. And I certainly wasn't there, 3 or 6 months ago.
Fuck yeah. No, all good things. Last thing I want you to share your share last night in the Tuesday night meeting. I know we're
Mm.
not supposed to say it, but if it's what we said, I guess we can say it.
We still swear on here?
Oh yeah,
Fuck
yeah.
it. How's that?
you gotta just share with the audience, like, just give us the short version, but just,
About compare versus identify.
well, but also just like the idea of like the stuff that you worry, when you were like the stuff that you worry about, or like
Yeah, yeah, and
that's that
it plays, I think, really well into what happened between you and I. Really,
for
right?
sure.
It's again that the magic word for today, perspective. So what I talked about last night was you're taught in these 12-step programs to identify and not compare, and a lot of times that is 100% the correct advice, and it's meant to stop you as a compulsive gambler and someone in recovery from trying to chase something that you don't have, because that's not how you're going to get where you want to go. You're going to get there a day at a time, doing the work and being honest with yourself. So comparing to somebody else who has something you want is no way to live, and it's no way to make progress. So that's kind of the commonly accepted I guess mantra when it comes to hearing somebody else's story. But we heard some really tough shit last night,
Mm.
really hard, deep emotional stuff, and that's the extent of what I'll share, because it's personal and it stays in those rooms. But the point is, like, from a perspective point of view, I I think it's good to compare sometimes. And for me, when I compare and realize how good I actually have it relative to other people around me, close to me, in the same room as me, in the cases last night, the things that I think are a big deal or that I complain about or that I feel sorry about myself for are bullshit.
Hmm.
And that's where I think it is okay to compare, excuse me. And it's not just sit there and try and identify and to relate. It's, you know what? I'm not in that situation. And I'm really, really sorry that person is, but I'm grateful that I'm not. And I'm going to take my petty little bullshit and stuff it in a locker for a second and keep putting one foot in front of the other, because I have no fucking excuse not to.
Mm. It hit just as good as it did last night.
How's that taste, buddy?
Welcome back, brother.
Thanks. Good to be here.
All right, we'll be right back. All right, and we're back. So before we get to Rob, aka Odat, aka, he's literally like the Joe Rogan of problem gambling right now. I mean,
60 Minutes, ever heard of it?
yeah, I mean he's an amazing guy. So excited for you guys to listen to that part one of our conversation. But guys like Rob, who his big thing on social media is not, I would say that, like, the modern meeting, you're going to hear a lot of stories. You're going to see, my funny face, and you're going to see certain things from us. But from Rob, it's a lot of numbers. It's a lot of statistics. It's a lot of, you know, Reddit threads, and just stuff that, like, is black and white facts. So in the spirit of that, I said to you, I said, hey, let's come up with some questions for each other.
Yeah. How
Based on
about how about this guy? My first podcast back in what, 3 months? I have fucking homework. Unbelievable.
But so the
Unbelievable.
best part about us, classic us, we do this and then we Googled the same shit and we have the same questions.
Yeah, a lot of the
So
same questions.
yeah, so it's fine. But so I want to talk about the first two real quick. And this shocked me. And it
Are we still doing the guessing game? Sorry, I'm learning along with the audience right now.
What do you mean the guessing game?
Are we still going to do the thing where somebody asks one and the other
No,
person
because,
guesses?
well, you can, all the ones. So the only ones that I have are the two.
Those two that you read. Okay, got it.
Yeah, yeah,
Yep.
yeah, yeah. So the first two that I want to talk about are the ones that we Googled together. But I just think it's shocking. So the National Institute of Health Recovery, whatever that is, but
Sounds like one of your T-shirts for one of your walks right there. It's a lot of words.
but okay, a study was done. But
Yeah,
no,
there we
a
go.
study was done that when it comes to alcohol and drugs, the relapse rate is 40 to 60%
At any point,
at any
relapse
point.
at any point once you're in
So
recovery. Okay.
when someone who goes into AA or NA or a treatment center for drugs or alcohol, the odds of them relapsing is 40 to 60%.
Okay.
You know what that number is for a compulsive gambler, people? 90%.
90%.
9 out of 10 people that walk into a 12-step meeting or a treatment center for gambling 9 out of 10 of them go back out and gamble again.
It's wild.
It's crazy.
It's also crazy that anecdotally you hear, we have a lot of friends in the fellowship who are in other 12-step programs, and almost all of them say that, this is the one.
Right.
I've
Yeah.
been, I've been sober from drugs and alcohol for 20 plus years. I cannot fucking stop gambling. We hear it a lot, and
Yeah.
the numbers back it up.
And, I have to admit, the first thing I thought was, I'm awesome because
Yeah,
I'm that 1 out of 10.
you're the 10%, bud.
I mean, and as are you,
Yep.
and as are, a bunch of our friends in the program. But holy shit, man. And I say this all the time. It's like, why am I so lucky? Like, why did the literature hit me in the face the way it did on February 8th, 2022? It's, and this also, the second thought I had was like, I have that much more sympathy for those who relapse because,
Yeah, it's not like what the fuck are you doing? It's
right,
it gets most people who walk through those doors, like you said.
90%. The
Yeah.
second thing, another research. This is from the Rutgers Addiction Research Center. Why do I gotta say it like that? That's
That's a
mean.
you thing, man. I don't know.
Yeah, but 5 million Americans have problem gambling, or there are 5 million Americans estimated right now that are compulsive gamblers. You know what percent of them are going to seek help? What number did you get?
So I was matched with you on the 90% with the first question. For this one, only 10% of people with a gambling problem seek treatment.
8 to 10%.
Yeah.
8 to 10% actually will seek help.
So that means that there's people who are getting surveyed in some form or fashion saying they have a gambling problem, but then also saying, yeah, I'm just going to chill on my gambling problem.
Yeah. Like 90% of these people aren't going to get help. And then
Right.
the 10% who do, 90% of them are going to
They're going to
relapse.
relapse. Damn.
Come on, man.
But
And
that kind of that speaks to what you're doing here, though, right?
fuck
There's a
yes.
lot of sick people out there who need help, and they need
And
as
it's,
many different ways as possible to deal with it.
and the number one reason that both of these things said of why these numbers are so high is a lack of treatment,
Lack of, dude, I had that written down too.
right?
It's
So
almost like we
that's
use
what,
the same internet.
that's, that's why we're here. So hit me with some of your other questions. Let's see if I can guess.
Okay. Okay, this one's interesting, and again, I'll cite my sources, and I'm just going to use a normal voice because I respect science and research. So, my the report, easy. I know.
He's
I'm
back,
still
baby.
funny. I'm still funny. So this is a report that BetAware, the National Coalition on Problem Gambling, Right Choice Recovery New Jersey, and various universities did together on problem gambling and relapse. Just to give some level of credibility to this, because I was very surprised by these answers.
Yeah.
So this is a subset of the what percent of compulsive gamblers relapse at least once. So what percent of gamblers within 6 months of recovery relapse?
So
In the
based
in the
on that
in the first
number,
6 months, what
yeah.
percent
So
relapse?
based on that number, I'm gonna say it's like, yeah, it's probably 80 to 90%.
So 25% within the first 6 months is what this study said. It's what this study
Okay.
said.
Okay.
Now, how many within a year plus?
So it's got to jump up. It's got to be like 60%.
50%. How many beyond 2 years of recovery?
Wow. So the number just keeps getting higher.
Yeah,
Yeah.
close to 80%.
Wow.
So again, at first glance, I was almost like, is this backwards? Should this be opposite? But I guess we know our core group of people in recovery in, let's say, 1 to 2, 1 to 3 meetings across the state of Rhode Island, right?
Right.
Small group. So in our minds, anecdotally, it's like, oh, as the X person that we know gets more and more recovery, in our minds, they're less likely to go out. The numbers seem to say that people are almost more dialed in early on when they're still in their honeymoon phase, as we've called it. And then as you get more recovery, and we've heard this, first year's the easiest, right? We hear that and roll our eyes like, really? But that's why we say shit like same problem tomorrow. We say it because it's true. This
But
is never going to go away. There's no graduation, and the disease is still the disease. There's no cure. They're,
And it's
they're
also, and it makes perfect sense because guess what happens in year 2 and 3? You pay off your debt.
right,
You start accumulating money in your bank
right.
account. You might think that meetings, I don't need to go to 3 anymore. I'm just going to go to 1. And so,
Start skipping one once a
it,
month, right?
right. So,
Same study. Which country has the most gambling losses based on total dollars per capita on an annual basis? Which country? Most gambling losses across the board per capita on an annual basis.
I'm going to say
Country.
this because I know they love to gamble and it's a huge country. I'm going to say China.
It's a good guess. I think that was in the top five.
Okay.
It's not number one.
I'm going to do one more guess. What
Okay.
continent is it on?
Mm,
It's going to give it away. Is it the US?
no.
No. Oh, I know actually because of Rob. This is a great segue. It's Australia.
Yeah.
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 He told me this.
Did he really? So they got a
Yeah.
bunch of blokes down there betting how many shrimp are on the Barbie. I
Yes,
should
yes.
I shouldn't joke about it, but yeah,
Yeah.
Australia, and then the Asian countries. It was China, Singapore, Hong Kong,
Yeah.
and then New Zealand was fifth.
Interesting.
So
Yeah.
a lot of gambling down under. I hope they find the modern
Anyone
meaning,
I've
and I
ever
hope they
met
meet.
from Australia too is like the nicest person
And
ever.
it's so incredibly great. The accent, so
Awesome
chill,
accent,
wants
usually
to hang out.
blonde, good looking.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Um, I
Shout
would
out
love to
Margot
go at some
Robbie.
point.
Shout out
Shout
Margot
out, shout
Robbie.
out, Margot, listener. Thanks, Margot. Uh, okay, so then building on that question, the same study defined the average amount of money lost by compulsive gamblers annually and by what they call recreational gamblers who were
Ooh,
not quite
ooh.
defined as compulsive or having a problem.
Okay,
So,
hold
what do
on.
you think? Start with recreational. What do you think is the average amount of money the group that was defined as recreational gamblers lost on an annual basis?
All right, a recreational gambler is not losing more than
And I'm guessing this is net, not
I'm going
just
to
like dollars
say
lost. Like I'm
I'm going to
guessing this is
say
net with winnings.
over the course of a year,
Yeah.
a recreational gambler is not going to lose more than $2,500.
Okay. I would have thought that too. I would have thought because you start breaking it out per month, right? Like somewhere
Yeah,
in
I
the
said
couple
I said I
couple
said a little
$100 a
over 200 a
month,
month. Yeah.
right? They had it as defined as an average of about $500.
Oh, that's
And again, this is net. So maybe it's somebody, maybe a recreational gambler is gambling once every 3 months and they're spending $100.
that's true. That's
I
true.
don't know. You and I were like,
I
well, I
am a
bet it.
compulsive
You and I were like, well, I bet every day, and I bet 3 times a day, and it was
I
fifty
am a
bucks a day.
compulsive gambler.
So
Like
yeah,
normal people
yeah,
don't gamble once a month even.
yeah. Well, okay.
Um,
Well, then there's the betting you do, overnight while you're sleeping,
right, right,
on
right.
the overseas sports, and there's the betting during the day. Um, okay. So then, what's your guess for compulsive gambler from
Yeah,
by these
so
definitions?
based on that, I'm still going to based on that then it has to be a lot smaller than I said, but yeah, so I'm thinking it's like 5,000.
They said three.
Yeah, no. So
So of people who are defined as compulsive
it's
gamblers
not 3. It's
by
not
their
3.
behavior. Well, here's the thing, though. I mean, we talk about amounts not mattering, right? This is
Right.
people who checked all the other boxes of defining themselves as a compulsive gambler, and then my guess is the question was, how much money do you lose on an annual basis? So,
True. True.
were you and I losing 10x that? Sure,
Yeah.
but
20,
we were
30x. Yeah.
whatever the equivalent is of like blowing a 0.24 or something versus a 0.08 on the gambling breathalyzer. I mean,
Right.
that's what you and I were doing. Not every compulsive gambler is even quite at the level that you and I were at in our lowest points. So maybe it's just maybe the bottom tier or the lower level of what's defined as compulsive gambling is a lot
Yeah.
lower of a standard than we thought.
Yeah.
Okay, I've got one more good one. How many compulsive gamblers who had sustained recovery did that without ever entering formal treatment or some sort of 12-step program?
Okay. How many gamblers had sustained
How many
recovery?
how many gamblers with sustained recovery? So that there was no definition of that, but just say somebody who
Yeah,
has
they didn't gamble.
substantial recovery built up. How many of them
Did
were
it
able to do
cold
that
turkey with no help.
without a treatment center or a 12-step program? Correct.
If it's more than 10%, I'm going to be pissed.
You want to guess, or is that your guess?
10%.
33%, a third.
That's going to
A
put us out of
third of
business.
a third of compulsive gamblers. It's going to put who out of business?
Us.
It's a you're outside of those definitions.
What do you mean?
The
So
modern meeting?
33% of all compulsive gamblers are able to stay away from a bet without any help.
For now,
Yeah, that's more than I thought it was.
it's not putting you out of business at all. If
No, I
anything, those
know.
people might want to listen to a podcast. They're not stepping in rooms.
For
They
sure.
may love it. We found some people in this journey, and you certainly have since I've last been on, that have found recovery in other ways that I feel like is really interesting perspective.
Definitely.
So I thought that was really interesting.
Yeah.
Um, that was pretty
Um,
much. There's a couple others, but those to me were the highlights. The scaling, the likelihood of relapsing scaling up as recovery time goes up. That graph would look pretty crazy.
mm,
Was pretty jarring and
for
scary.
sure. It's
And
crazy.
a reminder to keep your head in the fucking swivel every day.
Yeah, and I think too, like it's it's honestly made me it's made me I know that lately, and we'll get into this maybe next episode, but I've been kind of out on meetings lately, right?
Yep.
But I think that, and I've also been a little hard on uh, members of our fellowship that are either like continually relapsing or just not grasping it, not sharing. And these statistics really kind of, they're putting myself in check a little bit, where it's like, listen, just because it's quote unquote easy for you right now, you don't know what it's like in these other people's heads. Maybe they can't share because they have crazy anxiety, or they're not going to be able to speak without bawling their eyes out. Like, they're not all like me and just want to be a grown man fucking crying. You know what I mean? Like, I I think that, and I've said it once, I'll say it a million times. It took me 20 years, okay? It took me 20 years to get into this room. Out of all the people last night in our meeting, so at the end of every meeting, after we give out the keychains and the medallions, we say, and if you've, I can say this.
And do the treasurer's report,
Congrats, Mr. Treasurer. That's right.
Mr.
He's now
Secretary.
treasurer and
Thank
I'm
you.
secretary. I love that. But so at the end
Hell
of
of a regime.
at the end of at the end of the meeting, the last thing we do before the Serenity Prayer is, if you have more, raise your hand to show that the program works. We had 29 people in that room last night. There weren't a lot of hands raised.
No.
You know what I mean? And you know, it's the numbers don't lie, and it's I need to make it a point of focus for me to not be so hard, whether it's to their face or not to their
Yeah, I mean,
face.
I
Like,
think these stats are good context. And what's the word of the day? They're good
perspective.
perspective. Also, I think the word over your right shoulder right now, whether it's with yourself or others,
Oh yeah.
patience.
Amen.
Patience.
All right, we'll be right back.